Bat Force Radio.
Bat Force Radio is rated M for mature, or should that be immature?
Hey guys, Dustin Wynn.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio, the Batman and DC podcast with no limits. This week we are joined by Dunk in New York.
What's up?
Grandpa Batman in Texas.
Howdy.
The Bat Force Times in New York.
Hello, hello.
And I'm Robin Cross in Canada. This week's guest is a New York Times best-selling author of YA titles like X-Files Origins and the Teen Titans Raven and Beast Boy books. She is also currently 7 issues into Criminal Sanity, with 1 issue remaining in the DC Black Label Joker and Harley Quinn series. Welcome to Bat Force Radio, Cami Garcia.
Woo! Hey, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you again. I think I just said that, for taking the time to join us. So I wanted to start right off with getting your origin story. So what was your inspiration to writing? Like, what was that thing that made you decide that this is what I want to do?
It's very superhero-esque. It was an accident.
Perfect. So, and you get superpowers.
Yeah. So I started out as a teacher. I was a teacher for 17 years. I worked with primarily elementary school, and then I tutored English in high school and junior high. And basically my best friend, Margaret Stoll, and I, she's the co-author of the Beautiful Creatures series with me, which is my first series. She and I are really good friends. She was in one of the few women at the time in gaming. She was a principal at 7 Studios, which was eventually bought by Activision. And I was a teacher. We were both fantasy nerds. And we basically wrote Beautiful Creatures on a dare from 7 of my students. And it kind of, we wrote it like serialized fiction. It kind of, the kids loved it. The teens loved it. And we accidentally got an agent, and we ended up getting it published. I was still teaching when the first book came out, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's very like, literally, we knew nothing about publishing. She had always wanted to be a writer, and I had, I'd done a lot of writing, mostly writing poetry for my brother's girlfriends. But like, I don't have an MFA or anything like that. I have a grad school degree in teaching. But I love fantasy. I love sci-fi. I grew up, I have 4 brothers, so I love superheroes and comics and all that kind of stuff. And we just kind of put our chocolate and peanut butter together. It's kind of like you guys having a show. Except we did it on paper, and the rest was kind of history. And then by the time the second Beautiful Creatures book came along, like, I wasn't teaching anymore, and then I was writing full time.
I was going to ask when that happened. Once the publishing started, at what point did you say, screw these kids, I'm just writing?
No, honestly, I really miss teaching. The hard thing is when you teach high school and college at a university, you can take a sabbatical. But when you teach younger children, you really can't, because they don't actually want a sub. They want their teacher. So I took I had to go on tour. So my boss gave me 3 weeks, a month off to go on tour for Beautiful Creatures. And while I was on the second leg of the tour, they offered us a deal for books 3 and 4. And I basically had to call and tell my boss. And she was like, yeah, we were expecting this. And, luckily it was May. So I came back for June with my students. And then, it was understood that they were going to find someone to replace me for the fall. And, and literally, like, that was it. Like, I've been writing full time ever since. There hasn't been a year I haven't had a book, and I stopped writing prose about 4 years ago to do graphic novels, which I thought would be one graphic novel, and turned into a number of graphic novels and the Black Label series.
Robin,
Yeah.
are you there? Okay.
I've been making an effort lately to give more people time to talk.
Oh, sorry.
So-
I'm a fast talker.
No, I meant those guys.
Oh, okay.
I've been nobody said anything, but I think I've just been critical of myself that I feel like I don't let other people get questions in. So I've just been trying to hang back for a minute in case someone else wants to say something. Okay. So yeah, you referenced it leading into now you're doing what with the Secret Files issue is what, a 10-issue series altogether with
It's
7 issues
nine. It
Yeah,
originally was going to be 10. I think originally it was 9 plus a special, but it turned out to be 8 plus the special.
Okay.
So I just finished writing. I'm done writing 8. The artists, Negocian and Jason Badauer and Annette Kwok, who's our colorist, are finishing, and 8 comes out in March, and then the collected comes out in September.
So what I wanted to say was Criminal Sanity is a pretty bold departure from the standard canon history of both Joker and Harley, as well as the relationship between them. Is that what were you setting out to do that with the story, to give them something new, or was that just where you found yourself going?
So my intro to DC was they were doing the new young readers line, and they wanted people to do middle grade and YA, young adult. So they tapped me to do a young adult, and I started doing the Teen Titans series. But in the beginning, they just said, like, who do you want to, what characters would you like to do? And it was toward the beginning, so there were only a few that had been claimed. And I said, well, I want to do Joker. And they're like, well, we're not really doing villains. And I was like, well, I can put together a great pitch. So I pitched Titans, but on the side, I was developing this whole Joker pitch, which was basically like his origin story, because we have a consultant, a actual forensic psychiatrist who consults on the series, and I've always been very fascinated by serial killers. I was considering writing an adult thriller, and Joker is always my favorite because he is literally the most dangerous. But in the DC canon, he's often depicted as insane, and he's actually a highly organized killer, which in real life would never be someone delusional. Organized serial killers are always either at average intelligence or above average. And in Joker's case, he's pretty brilliant. So I basically wanted him to be scary. And to me, someone who's delusional, who, might be doing something because they're afraid, Satan is talking through their dog, and if they don't do it, they're going to die. The Sacramento vampire, the famous story was he actually believed that if he didn't drink, blood from animals or humans, his heart was shrinking and he would die. So to me, like, someone who's killing people because they believe they are, saving themselves in some aspect isn't as scary as someone who is literally a hunter and kills for fun. And to me, Joker is really one of the scariest figures in fiction and media. He's very much like, Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter to me. So I wanted him to be scary and like completely aware of his faculties. And, on the flip side, the Harley Quinn has always bothered me because she's so brilliant, and she's a forensic psychiatrist. She's working in, Arkham. And real forensic psychiatrists do not fall in love with their patients, especially not psychopaths, because a psychopath they can't love you. There's no empathy, no compassion. They're never going to fall in love with you. There's nothing to love. They're very reptilian. And she would know that. So when I decided that Joker was going to be this larger than life, real, totally sane serial killer in Gotham, he needed someone to pursue him, a profiler. And, who better than Harley? So I knew right away I was not writing a love story. but I also knew that I wanted the tension that is constant between the two of them, that just happens to be generally romance. But I believe like you can have a lot of tension in lots of different types of relationships. You don't necessarily need romance. So I kind of wanted to preserve the core of her character. I wanted her to still be a survivor, but instead of surviving an abusive relationship, she survived an abusive mother. And she's also lost her best friend to the Joker, which is right in issue one, years and years ago. And now she is pursuing this new present day serial killer, and she has no idea who this guy is, the identity of this guy. And we know it's Joker early on, but she doesn't know it's him. And it's really a procedural. Gordon's in it, and it was really fun to do. Gordon when he's still lieutenant, and I mean, there's a lot of forensic accuracy. There's a lot of accuracy in the crime scenes. I had to do a ridiculous amount of research, everything from chemical weapons and electromagnetic fields and police procedure. And then my artists have to do a ton of, reference work because they're drawing all these, real life, pieces of art and machinery and technical things. So I just think to me, it was kind of a dream project. And I was a little surprised DC let me do it. I mean, I did have a gigantic pitch with a table of contents, but I still was like, when they told me I could do it, it was kind of like a dream, because there are a few characters to me that are larger than life in popular culture, and Joker's one of them.
One of the cool aspects that I like about the story is you go back sometimes to Harley teaching classes. And where that's useful is, like you mentioned earlier, that there's a difference between, and it's explained in the book as well, that there's a difference between someone who's a psychopath and someone who's just a depraved killer, but, has all of this organization. They know exactly what they're doing. And Harley is teaching that to a class. And as she's doing that, it's like speaking to the reader, telling them, this is why he's not a psychopath. This is why he knows exactly what he's doing and why he's dangerous.
He's a psychopath, but he's not a psychotic psychopath, because psychosis is the presence of delusions. And, like Ed Gein, who is very famous, he's the one who made like furniture out of, skin and lampshades and that sort of thing. Like, he was delusional. He really had psychological reasons, and that he believed what he was doing was a different purpose than what he was actually doing. And I wanted it to be clear that there are killers like that who are killing because they have a delusion, or they are kind of living in a fantasy world of a hallucination. Some of them may be, schizophrenic. Some of them may, actually, Ed Gein was also suffering from dementia, even though he wasn't that old. So there can be all these complicated reasons. But the most important thing to me with Joker was I wanted him to be a true predator, which, that exists in our world. There are psychopaths, there are serial killers, there are the Ted Bundys of the world were literally just out there like hunting for prey. And I wanted him to be that, because he is so brilliant. I mean, to me, like, the Heath Ledger portrayal was always so, like, kind of spot on for me, because it was so clear that even though he liked to present as really crazy, he knew exactly what he was doing.
I'm always interested in hearing from writers that have generally or originally just worked in prose, and then they work in, the graphic novels, comics genre. What's it like when you see your story on paper, drawn out for the first time?
Yeah, it's amazing. I actually went to art school for a short time. I can't draw. I did like mixed media work, but I have an insane appreciation for drawing because I know how difficult it is. And I just have always grown up loving art. I have a brother who's a photographer. And so for me, it was like a dream come true. I had consulted on the Beautiful Creatures manga, but Not to this degree, because I didn't write the story. She literally took all the text from the book. So what I was basically doing was just approving art, but I wasn't actually participating in the storytelling in a way. And like when my first graphic novel was Teen Titans Raven with Gabriel Piccolo, who's incredibly talented, and he hadn't done a graphic novel either. And now I am, having been a teacher, I am a very prepared person. I have done teleplays and other things, so I was very comfortable writing a script. But I also read, I think I read every book I could get my hands on about how to write a comic. I was on Medium reading like every interview I could get from Brian Michael Bendis and, Matt Fraction and Kelly Sue DeConnick. And I was really trying to do my homework. But I also think that because I'm a very like visual writer, when I write, I picture what's happening. So in my mind, so it's kind of like a movie in my mind, and I am like recording what I see and what the characters are saying. And so that worked really well for the graphic novel format. And also because I involved Gabriel from the beginning, even though I knew the gist of the story and I already had it all kind of blocked out, I didn't actually write the whole script until I had him on board, because I really wanted him to be able to participate in creating the characters. Because even though they were kind of based on the casual Teen Titans he was drawing, like there were a lot of characters that were new because it's an origin story. So I had to populate the world. And so, I wanted him to get to create those characters from scratch, because a lot of times I hear artists complain about the fact that, like they're treated kind of like you come on and do the work, which obviously, like I can't imagine a lot of professional writers do not treat them that way, but that's a common complaint. And to me, I just saw him as like my co-creator, kind of like, Margaret was my co-writer. So I just saw it as like it was our book and our world. And I kind of explained my vision, and he told me what was important to him about the characters. And then like, we brainstormed and we went back and forth. And if one of us didn't like something, then we ditched it. It was not like you draw what I tell you. It was like we brought the characters to life together. And that was actually the same thing that I did with Miko from the very beginning. Was because he was going to get to create this new Joker. So it was like, here's what I see. What do you see? And we put it together. Mm-hmm. So even though you get to see the characters a lot of times in the beginning before you get pages, it's really different when you get the actual pages with all the panels. And it really, even though I read graphic novels and I knew that this is sequential storytelling and that the art is part of the story, when I saw how much it brought to my script, it was just so overwhelming in the best way, because it really brought everything to life. And it filled in gaps and kind of, created like bridges in the story that, sometimes I didn't even intend, but like I could tell the moment Gabriel drew them, like belonged to there.
That's awesome.
There was a quote from you. Now, I don't know how much of this comes from your consulting with Dr. Kurz on this book, and I think he also worked with you on your X-Files. Mm-hmm. But there was a quote I saw from you where you said, "I know an inappropriate amount about serial killers for someone who's not a serial killer or a psychiatrist." Yes. Does that come from consulting so much with someone like Dr. Kurz?
It comes from consulting, and then also with Dr. Kurtz. His partner is a good friend of mine too, Tom Sixby. He was my other consultant on X-Files, and I, worked with him a lot. But I also, I don't want to say I'm attracted to darkness, but my stepfather was an undercover cop. So I always, at a very young age, had an awareness of like that there were dangerous people that, did not feel remorse, were not going to feel bad for you if they did terrible things to you. My brothers and I were very aware of strangers and the fact that kids got kidnapped. So I think that part of that was like the training. I mean, my stepdad from a young age, it was like, what do you do if some guy walks up behind you? I mean, he was doing like wrist holds, and like I know how to get out of handcuffs and zip ties. Like those were things that to him were like practical knowledge that was important for me to know, especially once I got to the age where I was like dating and working, as a teenager and leaving the house alone. I mean, I had to learn how to drive stick because my stepfather said, and this is in my, by the way, like the car that he rebuilt with me was automatic, but he said, what if you get kidnapped by some guy and he takes you out in the middle of nowhere, but then he goes to do something and you somehow get loose and you're able to escape, but the only car that's there is a pickup truck and it's stick shift. Like, what are you gonna do? And I was like, those are a lot of pieces to fall into place, like for this scenario to come to fruition. And he said, what are you going to do? Like, do you want to not know how to drive stick and you can't escape because like you're too lazy to learn how to drive stick? And I was like, okay. And it wasn't really a discussion. Like it wasn't really up for, I wasn't allowed to say no. And I made fun of him my whole life, but not to get it, it's a long story, but when I was 22 or 23, when I was first teaching, I woke up in my apartment that I lived in alone, and there was a guy in my room I did not know, a stranger in my room. And I got out of the situation unscathed. And it is 100% because of all that ridiculous training.
Wow.
So now my stepdad will tell you that he saved my life with his preparation. But and I kind of use all that because I think about like especially when I'm like with something dark like Joker, and also X-Files, the X-Files Origins Agent of Chaos is like has a serial killer in it also. And I use those moments of like being afraid and like remembering what it's like when, it's very different. Like you feel like you're really prepared for an emergency or a scary situation in your mind when you're playing it out. But when you like wake up and there's like a guy standing like in your room, it's totally different. So I try to weave the experiences that I've had into my work the best I can.
Yeah, I can see now as you're explaining what you've been taught, what you've been exposed to, where all of that plays into, in particular, how you're writing Criminal Sanity. Because when you're reading this book, it feels like you're reading a crime story that happens to be in a comic book and happens to be using characters that we know from comic books. It doesn't feel like you're reading a comic book.
Yeah, so that was kind of when I pitched it to Dan DiDio and Jim Lee and Bob Harris, a long time ago. That's what we talked about, was the idea of, taking who I consider one of the most iconic serial killers in, media, in pop culture, and putting him on the page to do his worst in Gotham, because we also always hear about all this crime in Gotham. So I was like, in this point, like he has the city under like terror. Like everyone is terrified. By the time the second or third murder happens and the police can't keep this under wraps anymore, people know there is a very dangerous killer out there. And Criminal Sanity is a dual story. So every issue cuts away at one point, and you actually see Joker from the age, it starts out, he's around 10. You see him basically evolve as a killer. And like you see kind of his beginnings and, his problems at home and how he loses his mom. And then you see kind of the progression, into this like very seasoned criminal and killer. And one of the things you find out is that the quote unquote Joker was killing previously. So people don't necessarily know that the person that's doing these present day murders in the series, they don't, the police haven't figured out it's a Joker, but the Gotham was already like tormented 5 years prior. And now it's like all of a sudden there's another killer who's even, more gruesome and, more dangerous. And so I tried to really, and I think my artists do the heavy lifting on this. Like Jason talks all the time about wanting Goth, to be able to capture that really gritty Gotham from some of the Batman runs, and gosh, I'm blanking. It's the GCPD series. Why am I totally blanking?
Gotham
Yeah,
Central?
Gotham Central.
Gotham Central. I was like, why am I blanking on this? That kind of gritty feel of Gotham.
Yeah.
And I feel like, they totally nailed that. And it's playing into that time where like Gordon is not the chief, like he's not the head yet. Like there's still a lot of corruption. And I really wanted to like it to feel that way. And I wanted to have like, when I was doing like the bullpen and stuff in the precinct, I was thinking about like the bullpen. My stepdad was an undercover cop. He was plainclothes. He wasn't a detective, but obviously I'd been in the bullpen a bunch of times. And I was thinking about like what those, that precinct was like, and the old holding cells in the 80s, where literally they were like right in the middle of the room practically. Like they weren't like in, a separate area. Like people were just like yelling from the holding cell the way they are in movies. And so I was trying to like kind of capture that feeling so that you could read it as, I honestly, my favorite part is the evolution of Joker in it and seeing Harley's progression, like her beginnings. But I feel like, you can read for different things. You can read for the like, my question was always kind of like, how does a man become a monster? How does like a regular boy evolve into that? So it's like you can be reading for that. You can be reading for the true crime aspect. You can be reading because like, maybe you are, interested in seeing Harley and Joker tension on the page that doesn't have anything to do with, dating or sexual tension, because theirs is almost intellectual tension. What appeals to Joker most about her is how smart she is and the fact that she is tracking him. Like he's kind of interested in her because she's studying him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, I've never been one to read much in the way of reviews or what people are saying about books online, but with the departure that you've taken here with characters, with giving not only with giving Harley a different look at her life, what we've seen of her past and the family that she had, and then just giving Joker a history period, giving him, we saw him as a child and we saw what was leading him to be this way. What's the response been like? That have you gotten pushback from fans, or has the?
No, I've been pretty surprised. I think that a lot of Harley is really kind of iconic, and she is very important to survivors. To women who've experienced violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, like women who've had to overcome really difficult odds. And I think because as someone who also has dealt with, relationship violence, it's kind of a bad label. I was stalked for a long time, but it wasn't actually someone I was in a relationship with, but that's what they call it. Like having been in those situations, it was very important to me to not strip that away from her, because what I feel like is important about Harley is always that ability to not give up, the ability to overcome and reinvent herself. Like the fact that like she is not going to go down without a fight. So I didn't want to take that away from her, because I was taking away the kind of like, wacky, like I fell for Joker aspect. So I was like, I want to keep the real fighter in her alive and well. I don't want to turn her into like just like a regular like bookish psychiatrist with like, a lab coat and glasses. Cause I was like, once she's exposed to him and he has an impact on her early life, like, she is way tougher than that. And so that was important to me. And then with Joker, it's hard to explain without having read it, but I do give him a backstory. But what you come to learn is that some of the things that are in the backstory aren't as they seem by the time you get all the way through his backstory. It was important to me there were certain things certain kind of mystique and like mystery around the character that I did not want to destroy. I didn't want to really tell you his real origins as a little kid. And even though there's some of that in there, you come to find out that there are pieces like that seem in place that later are kind of a twist.
I've been suspicious of that.
Yeah.
As I was reading each issue, I kept thinking like, gosh, something's up here. Like we're gonna find out that this wasn't really him as a kid. Like we thought it was him, but this is just someone that he killed.
I don't do well. Actually, that's a really good twist. That is not it, but that's a really good twist. But you will see a big twist because one of the things that when I was pitching this, one of the things I said to Dan and Jim was, having come from the X-Files, which, so the X-Files origins are actually 2 books. One's Mulder's written by me, and then Scully was written by Jonathan Mayberry. And Chris Carter made those canon, which was not the original plan. They were just going to be like these fun fiction books. But, I am a fan, and so is Jonathan. So it was really important to us to respect the work and the core of the character. And that really taught me, that you can do a lot of things with a character and fans will be okay with it as long as like you are respecting, kind of the unwritten rules. And I said early on to Dan and Jim, like, you're going to have to read like a ways to like get to it. But I said, you're not going to find out his real name. You might think you are, but you won't in the series. You are not going to find out like all of the details about his childhood. Like there are a lot of twists. And of course, I'm not going to spoil them here, but I outlined them for them. So I said like, what the reader might think that they're getting in the first couple issues, and they might be suspicious, but I didn't hold back on that in interviews and Comic-Con and things like that. I was very honest with the readers and said like, stay with me on the journey. And I promise I'm not going to like ruin the mystique for you.
Now, there's a cool thing that Joker does, like sort of his calling card throughout the story where he does, he takes the coat hangers and he twists them up to put inside the person's mouth and give them a smile. Does that did that idea come from your exposure to the long exposure to like police culture, or the exposure to the studying of the psychology of killers?
It was really the psychology because, well, and also, there was always like a question, like, Miko kept saying like, are we I know, you're not going to have him have, like he's not going to do kind of like the old Jack Nicholson thing to their faces, but I wanted to have like these nods to the actual, to the kind of iconic things that we associate with those characters. And I really wanted there to be a smile aspect because Joker, even though his makeup is kind of like, it's not as smiley as normal. It's much more smeared because he kind of does it by hand. So I was like, I would love to have a smile somewhere or a nod to the smile. So that was kind of like my nod. And that's his signature in the early murders, and then it actually changes. So I felt like for that, that part of the story, people would get one of those kind of like, those little iconic things that we know about him. Miko does it a couple times in some of his pages. Like you'll see, Harley wears obviously like her leather jacket and boots and jeans, but like you see once in a while there'll be a shadow or something that's like kind of in the diamond harlequin shape. And it's like those kind of little things where like we just want to, like we gave her, like she has this black leather jacket, and then on the colored pages you see there's like a racing stripe on the side that's red. And that was Miko's idea. He was like, I want there to be something red. So it's not like she doesn't have a costume on, but it's like a typical, like a nod to her colors. So those were like little things we did.
There is one other little thing. I think it's in a flashback where she was maybe flashing back to when her roommate, her best friend, was killed.
Mhm.
And we see that photo of the two of them,
Yeah.
and you just see the very, like, just her shoulders, and, like, maybe an inch or two below her shoulders, and it looks like she's wearing like a Harley style costume.
She is. That was Jason's idea. It's Halloween, and you see she's wearing like the Harlequin outfit and her costume with her best friend Edie. And those were the kind of things that, like, it was, and that wasn't in the script. Those were like the things where, like, once the artist, like, once we talked about, like, this is what we're doing, and Miko was signed on, like, Mike Mayhew started with us, and he was on the first 2 issues and did a phenomenal job. But Miko was the first artist attached, and he jumped on board with me like the October before we even started. So basically a year before the first issue came out. And so he has been in this for a long time now. And just the level of, like, commitment and how much he and Jason put into these pages, and God, like, Annette's colors, crazy, so amazing. But, like, they put so much into this, and it really is a labor of love. The pandemic and scheduling things kind of, messed with us. We had to go from being monthly to bi-monthly, which I think is hard for people because, like, you lose a lot of momentum that way. So my hope is that once it's collected and people can just sit down with the whole thing, and, like, David Mack did the special with us, like, I'm such a fan of his. Like, that was such an amazing honor. He did several interior pages and the cover, and then throughout the flashbacks, we used his handwriting from the special as the Joker's handwriting, which is cool.
One thing I want to clarify from in the beginning. So when the series is referred to as 9 issues, that's including the Secret Files
special
issue?
Yes. So the Secret Files is it's 1 through 8 plus the Secret Files.
So there's just 1 issue left.
1 issue left, coming out in March.
Man.
And it is, I mean, I love 7 personally because it has, like, an amazing murder scene in it that was so much fun. But 8 is really big. And the cool thing about this series was I knew how it was going to end, like from the moment I came up with the idea of, like, because originally I came up with this YA idea, and it was interesting because Marie Javins, who's now the editor-in-chief, she was actually working on the children's line. It was before she moved as group editor for JLA, and I pitched it to her, and she was like, okay, this is too dark for what we're doing. But she said, but I love it. Like, and Michelle Wells, who was also the VP of the line, was like, this is great. Like, and she kept encouraging me. She's like, I don't know what you could do with this, but, like, if there was a way to age it up. And I didn't know about Black Label. It hadn't been announced. And I kind of came up with this structure to be able to age it up. And, where suddenly, like, Harley played this giant role, and it was like, it was like backstory was the teen story I had. And then the front story was like, who did this teen turn out to be? And when I pitched all of that, it was interesting because Black Label had not been announced, and they had people working on it, obviously, the first couple titles, but they kind of said, like, there's a place for this, because we're creating this line for these kind of, out of continuity, stories where you get to play with the characters a little more. And, the main thing was, originally I really thought it was going to be 9 issues, but because of all the stuff, like, the Secret Files is super cool, and it has, like, 2 different sets of like, information in it. It has case files and it has other things in it, and because, like, we had kind of stuff going into that, it turned out that it was going to be 8 plus the 1 shot. So, I mean, I'm excited to see how people respond to the end, because I think it's great, and I've seen, like, the art, and it's amazing. So, like, Jason and Miko really, like, brought their A game. They were like, we're gonna, blow everyone away with the last issue. So
Yeah,
I'm really
I've always loved
excited for people
Miko's
to
work.
read it. They're both really amazing, and Miko's work in the series is in grayscale and with just spot color on Joker's makeup in places, and blood is usually the other thing that gets colored, and everything else is like he just is ink. And then all the backstory and cutaways of like that are not in Harley's POV, like of Joker at other times in the past or in color. And it's just, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
and
something you guys did differently from what we usually see. Like typically, if we get a story that takes place in the future and in flashbacks, we'll get the current story pages are in color, and when it goes to the past, it's black and white. But this is the opposite. We get those the history in color, and all the current stuff is
and
that
you'll
just heavy
see
black.
it, and you'll see it. There's a couple crime scenes only that are in color because Harley does not arrive at them immediately. One of them, like the people discover it before the police. So like that one's in color, and you can really see like the drawing is very photorealistic in the series. So like it's very graphic, and like I feel like somehow the black and white and Miko's inks, it's incredible, but it gives you like a little bit of distance so that you're not like, necessarily looking at like blood and viscera all the time.
Yeah. Now we are getting close to our time cap here, so there are just a couple things that I wanted to get to here. One, this isn't even about your work per se, but I wanted to ask you, just as a creator and someone who obviously would prefer for your work to come out the way you wrote it, the way you intended it. What are your thoughts on something like the Snyder Cut situation that we're seeing right now, where fan demand was able to undo changes to a creator's vision that were put into play by the powers that be?
I mean, the thing that really protects me is like no one can change my, like in my graphic novels, like contractually, like no one can just write over my words. Like they have to show them to me. And I actually think that that's one thing I like about prose versus like screenwriting, where like anyone can just change whatever. Like in comics, I've also found there's a lot of respect given to us. Like even when there'll be an issue, when my Christy Quinn, my editor for Joker, will need to change something, she always says, I need to change this. Are you okay with that? Or would you prefer this? And I do think about that because I have done teleplays, and I know when you write for TV and screen, like people can just change whatever. Um, and I feel like you have to know that going in, because it is, and for me, it's not that I'm precious, but it's that like, I don't want my name on something I didn't write. You know what I mean? Because like for better or worse, if it's like story by and then someone else goes over the script and their name's on it, it's fine. But I don't want my name on something I didn't do. So I think that, and in a way, I think the Snyder Cut's cool because it's the original vision for the film. And I do think that like fans knowing that there was this bigger, longer, like more nuanced script, and that his family circumstances, which were could be so unforeseen and so tragic, prevented him from being able to finish the film. Like that's a really unique situation. I'm glad it's coming out because I feel like as a creator, it's probably amazing for him to get to finish and actually show everyone what he spent all that time on. But I also think that the truth is, like, as a fan too, like if I am a fan of a creator or something, that trailers are coming out and people are telling me what it's going to be about, like that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I don't want to find out that other people were tampering with it and now it's a different thing. And that is one reason why I really enjoy novels and comics and things at a close kind of truer level than I enjoy like films, because I know that screenwriters and even directors, like they don't have the final say all the time. So there might be things they really wanted in their film that maybe somebody vetoed. Whereas, with my novels, it's like no one can change my words without permission, literally. So I know that whatever I put out in that book is what I agreed upon at the end, that I signed like the past pages. And, I do think that I don't know, it's a nice feeling knowing that someone isn't going to come and trample my work, and that if it's messed up, it's because I messed it up.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, and I will say I have never had DC get, try to change anything without telling me. I've never had them they've never like tapped me to do something and then said, "Oh no, we changed our mind. We don't want you to do that. We want you to do this." They have been very cool about like, if they don't like something in a pitch, they tell me right away. And they're like, "Is that a problem? Are you okay with that?" But it's never like I write a script and they're like, "We changed our mind. Now we really want Beast Boy to do this." So I respect the fact that like when they hire me for a job, or they accept one of the pitches that I've turned in for a project or a script, like that, it's the vision that I originally, offered them. And I think that's why I continue to work with them, because I love that. I don't want to work for people who, tell me that they want one thing, and then I spend all this time because I do spend a lot of time developing things, and then have them say, "Oh no, we changed our mind. We just want, we don't want a meaty story. We just want, like cotton candy." Because it's, like I want to know going in, like, I want to know what age I'm writing for. I want to know the audience, the medium. And, I think they've been very cool about that. And all my editors, like Christy, it's funny because my editor is Christy Quinn. I always tell her she's related to Harley. And, and Michelle Wells, like, I have worked with some other editors, associate editors, like they've all been fantastic.
It's great that everything is positioned that well, because it wasn't always that way, particularly in the early Black Label stuff. We had some conversations with Liber Mayo back when that was going on, but it's nice that you don't have to go to war with them to keep your vision in there.
And honestly, like, but I was very, like my pitch was ridiculous. Like it was very, because I wanted them to know, like, if I'm doing this, it's going to be bloody. It's going to have like actual murder scenes in it. Like, it's not going to be like fluffy.
Yeah, you're slitting people's throats.
Yes. So like, I wanted them to know that. And like I said, like I had no problem with like, like Bob Harris was always looking at it, also approving, and Jim, like I had no problem if someone's like, "Oh, we don't like this camera angle, or we want the shot different. We don't want it quite this close." Like that's all cool. But if they had been like, we really want them to just like solve like Scooby-Doo mysteries and we don't want to see any bodies, like that is not what I signed on for.
Can you get rid of these times where it says the trachea was removed without causing any damage?
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like I just was like, but there are pages. There's an autopsy page, and Miko and I have a very high tolerance. Like we're both Hannibal fans. We're both David Fincher fans. Like, and there was a point, like Christy will say things like, "Please don't send the autopsy reference photos to me in the email. Like, please send them only to Jason and Miko." But like Miko has a super high tolerance. He's like, like he'll send me pictures and be like, "Do these ligaments look the right size, or should we use tendons?
Is this intestine falling out on the bench look
okay?"
He'll
be like, well, he wrote me earlier on. He's like, "There's we call it the Vitruvian Man murder in the first one." And Miko wrote, he's like, "Okay, my sister's a nurse and she's really concerned that it's going to be too hard to see the ligaments in the grass. So we should have tendons." And he's like, "Here's the size difference." Like, those are the kind of conversations. And Jason said early on, like, "Okay, guys, like, I don't want to see these autopsy photos. I want like a small screen cap of the section I need to draw, and you don't need to tell me what it is." Like, so, we did things like, like the autopsies from the side, because even Bob was like, "Please tell me this is not going to be from above." And I was like, and after I like actually did a lot of study, like for example, I did not realize that when they do the autopsy, they actually take all the organs out. They like weigh them and measure them and stuff, and then they put them all back in. And Bob was like, "Please, we cannot have like hearts laying on the table." And And so those are the kind of things where Miko was like, really? And I was like, listen, this is like, he is not the first person. Like several people have mentioned this. It seems like you and I are the only people that think the heart and like, the liver laying around is not a weird thing. So, we try to like work within, like everyone's tolerance, because again, like I also don't want it to be like, we're just trying to show you gross stuff for shock value. Like we want to show accuracy, but if the accuracy is going to gross everyone out, then like, I was like, okay, we're going to show different instruments in the autopsy room, instead of, because originally like me and Miko, we were going to have them like the ME weighing a heart. And Bob was like, oh, and Christy was like, wait, oh no, it's actually Molly Mahan, when she was still at DC, was the original editor, and she was like, I don't know about weighing the heart.
Why do people only like seeing hearts if they're inaccurately shaped?
I know. I was like, this is a great opportunity. This is like a great opportunity for all the biology classes people missed. And but it was like clear that since Miko and I were the only people down with this, that was probably not a good idea.
So after writing, in this, I guess, Black Label tone, do you like, or do you want to pursue at this more mature comic level, or would you be more comfortable going back to like a
I just finished a unannounced YA graphic novel that hasn't been announced yet, and I mean my part, the script, and I'm still working on Teen Titans. So I think for me the real thing is like it depends on the subject, because I love doing teen stuff. I love writing for teens. I love writing, Beast Boy and like these fun characters and seeing all of these people come and cosplay the characters.
Do you find it hard going from one age group to the?
No, it was actually pretty funny because I did this big fancy panel that was very intimidating, because it was me, Jeff Lemire, the night after he won the Eisner, Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, and John Romita Jr. and me. And I'm like sandwiched between John and Jeff. And, this was when they would announce the series, but wasn't out yet. And, Dan was the moderator, and, he said, like, a lot of people in the audience are asking, like, how are you going to be, going to be able to shift from, like Beast Boy and Raven to this? And I said, like, and it was funny because John Romita Jr. was like laughing, and he's like, yeah, you look like a school teacher. Like, you look like such a nice lady. And I said, well, that may be so, but like, do you know how to melt body fat? Because I do. And I said, like, I am a dark girl, and I really have two speeds, like darker adult stuff or teen. Like, what I don't have a great handle on is like, like fun, carefree adult. Like I'm kind of like if they gave me like a DCU title, it would have to be someone dark. Like I could never do, like the fun like I couldn't do the Flash.
Yeah.
Like
unless he was doing autopsies.
Yes, unless it was like Autopsy Flash.
Doing really fast autopsies.
But like give me, like
Dead Man.
Yeah, or I love Deathstroke.
Yeah.
Like somebody damaged, someone who has like a lot of darkness going on. Like I could totally do that. So I like both, but I will say, which I totally knew going in, writing a periodical, I don't care what age group it's for, is so much harder than writing a graphic novel. Like writing in that weekly, monthly form, that, where your story is not all coming out in one volume is so hard. I don't know how some of these creators are doing like multiple weekly comics, like they're machines.
And like how Tom King does things, like where he is at one time he'll be balancing like 3 12-issue miniseries, like that.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like I have no idea how he's doing that, and they're all coming out like once a month, like because that's still, like Joker is weeks of work for me for an issue. So like if that had remained monthly, there's no way I could have like balanced another title or two on top of it. So I don't know how Bendis, like I don't know how any of these like super prolific writers Jeff Lemire is constantly writing multiple projects. Scott Snyder. That I give it to them because it's really hard, and it's like a masterclass because you each issue has to be like a very significant big piece of story, that is like entertaining on its own, but obviously a part of the bigger whole. And that is that's much more actually like writing episodic television, like writing a TV series that comes out weekly versus streaming. And that's hard.
Well, we have already kept you here longer than we had discussed. I just can't let you out of here without firing up Gramps here to hit us with a quick lightning round.
Okay.
Ready. And these are just random questions that I'm just going to pull out of the air. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Chocolate peanut butter.
Chocolate peanut butter. And what kind of toppings do you like to put on there?
I'm like a traditional hot fudge sundae girl, or I like weird flavor only. I don't like weird flavor plus stuff. So if it's plain, it's like vanilla ice cream, hot fudge, nuts, cherry, whipped cream, or it's like, weird mix-ins. But I'm honestly like Dairy Queen dipped cones are like my favorite thing ever.
Yes.
So good.
They just opened up the one close to me closed, and then they just reopened, and they always, you order the dip cone, and for the longest time I always wondered why they hold it upside down and then give it to you. But it's to show how frozen it is and how cold it is.
Totally. Yeah, because they also tip over like the blizzards. They like flip them over. Dairy Queen is amazing.
Okay. Well,
Got to do the pizza one.
Okay, let's do the pizza one.
I like pizza.
Your favorite type of pizza, or which type is best? New York style or like Chicago?
Oh my God, that's so hard. Okay, so like pizza is literally one of my favorite foods, and like I am equal opportunity when it comes to pizza. I like Detroit. I like all of it, but what I don't like is I don't like California like vegetable pizza. Like I want regular pizza. So I either want New York thin crust or I want deep dish with like ham, pepperoni, sausage. I don't want vegetables on my pizza unless it's like garlic. Like no broccoli, no spinach, none of that stuff. Like maybe pineapple if it's Hawaiian pizza, but that's like the only excuse to put a vegetable or fruit that is not tomato on the pizza.
And please tell me you don't like dip your pizza in like salad dressing, like ranch or something like that.
No one does
There are people that do that. That's like a sin.
Come on. Where?
It's the same it's the same kind of people that don't want to see hearts being weighed in comics.
No. Because I know several of those people, but I don't know anyone who dips their pizza in salad dressing. Several.
And I've seen my nose up at them.
Yeah, that's no. I don't do anything weird to my pizza, but eat it. Like I don't dip it in anything strange. Like to me, pizza is like the perfect portable food. Unless you're eating deep dish, which actually requires a knife and fork. Any other pizza you should be able to like pick up and eat while you're driving in your car.
Do you have any pets?
I do. I have 2 dogs, Spike and Oz, named for characters from Buffy.
Nice.
They're dogs, a miniature long-haired dachshund who's very bad. And I have a half Shiba Inu, half yellow lab, so he looks kind of like a coyote. Oh, and we have 2 fancy rats now.
Oh,
I forgot. Yeah, they're Dumbo rats. They're apparently fancy doesn't mean they look fancy. Fancy means that they've been bred, like domesticated. They've never been outdoors. I thought it was like fancy roosters where it just meant they looked fancier, but that is not what it means. And they're Dumbo rats, so they have big ears like the Ratatouille, like cartoon rats.
Okay.
And they're named Mochi and Boba. They're my daughter's pets.
Do they like pizza?
They like everything. They really like spaghetti and meatballs.
Do they eat it together?
Well, no,
Lady and the
because
Tramp.
it's pretty. I mean, like the meat, they're not like wharf rats. Like the meatball is like bigger than their head. But like but what they do is if you give them spaghetti, like they eat it from the ends, like in Lady and the Tramp.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cute.
So, okay. I mean, I guess while we're on this food theme, food is a fun topic for us.
I love food. Like I literally, you can get me to like go on tour at places based on like what I can eat when I'm in the city.
Okay. What would you, and this may be morbid, but you said you're a dark girl, so let's talk about it. If you were on death row, what would your last meal be?
Oh, that's so hard. And actually I have considered this many times. Watching like every time I watch like Dead Man Walking, I was like, what would I be eating? I feel like it would have to be pizza, Chinese food, and hot fudge sundae. Because like as much as I love, my family's Southern, like as much as I love fancy dessert, like Coca-Cola cake and stuff, like at the end of the day, it's like a hot fudge sundae. And that's kind of why I like the dip cone, because it's like a cheap version of a hot fudge sundae. It's like a mini.
Right.
So I feel like a hot fudge sundae, and then my favorite, I mean, I love to cook, so I make a lot of Italian food, but I think I would want like foods I didn't make, and I would probably want pizza and Chinese food.
You know what the worst thing about your last meal on death row? If you got to do things like that, like say like, yeah, I want pizza and Chinese food, and I want a gyro, and I want this, and I want this. To imagine at that point where you're just eating as much as you can of these different things that you wanted. On that day, your last day on Earth, finding out, shit, these two things are great together, and I'm just finding out now.
That's true. Or what I was thinking was like, then they would to put you on death row, and you have like a bad stomach ache.
Yeah.
Which
What do
would
they
suck
do now?
also.
Do they have to? Do they delay it?
No, I think they just
they'll
say tough shit for you.
Damn.
I'm probably not supposed to say that.
Oh no,
You can say
okay.
whatever you want.
We just usually wait for the guest to swear before we start.
Yeah,
with Tom King, it's in the first 30 seconds.
Plain or peanut M&Ms?
Peanut for sure.
Nice.
What about peanut butter?
What about peanut butter?
Yeah.
Peanut butter, I like both. I like crunchy and smooth. Depends on like what I'm doing with it. Like I feel like crunchy is only good like when it's just a peanut butter sandwich, like just bread. But I feel like, smooth can go on like English muffins and all kinds of other weird stuff. Like you can, mix Oreos with smooth, but crunchy is like just for sandwiches.
So let's end on an easy one. What is your most embarrassing moment? Go.
Oh my God, I have no idea. My most embarrassing moment.
The time that I had pizza and Chinese food and got a stomach ache.
Yeah, really. What I don't like, I'm fine on panels. I don't love being in front of a lot of people, but I definitely don't like being like the center of attention. And when I turned 21, I was in New York, and I told my friends I didn't want to go to any kind of like those male dance shows. I was like, I do not want to do that. And they were like, okay, we're going to go to dinner. And so they take me to one where it's like they claimed it was high end. I mean, it looked fancy, but let me tell you, it's all the same. It's still Magic Mike. Like there's, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. And there was like a stage portion where I had to sit in a chair while there was like singing of Happy Birthday, and it was horrific. It was awful. And I was drinking, and I still vividly remember how horrible it was. And I remember the guys come out and sing, and there was a lot of like Motley Crue hair and like whipping of hair. And I also, because of the undercover cop thing, I don't like strangers touching me, like especially not like strangers that have like baby oil on and not all their clothes. And I just remember thinking like, like a lot of these ladies were so excited. They really wanted their turn to come up and be, have someone sing happy birthday to them. And I was just thinking to myself, like, this is my worst nightmare, like strange, weird men whipping their hair around, and they all smell like Hawaiian tropic.
I was getting hungry when we were talking about the food, but this fixed it right up.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. It fixed it, and I sobered right up.
I don't want any food, and I don't want any birthdays.
And I was literally, after that, like when my girlfriends were like, what are we going to do for a bachelorette party? I was like, nothing. we're having a daytime
Stay at home.
shower. Yeah, because I was like, I trust none of you anymore after the 21st birthday. It will never, and like there has never been a replay. I was like, this is, and they were all so like because I was so embarrassed, and they loved it. They were like, they felt like such geniuses that they tricked me.
I could smell the Hawaiian topic right now. Like, oh.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about it. Like, I've always still, like, I mean, I've still been the girl who's like, worried about a guy pushing me in the white van to make a coat out of me. And there's like, and I'm like in the chair with the Hawaiian Tropic, and I'm sure there was some sort of like Poison song playing. It was horrible.
Oh.
It was not my speed.
And see, what's funny is that Dave is laughing here because he tells us the story all the time about when he was a dancer and embarrassed the shit out of this girl singing happy birthday to her.
You better not have been there, Dave. We're gonna have especially if you were the one with that, like, Sebastian Bach Skid Row hair that was being flailed around.
No, definitely not me.
When Dave takes off his clothes and oils up, he only dances to Goodbye Horses, so you were safe there.
Great, because I literally, but I vividly just also remember thinking like, like I remember there was like a, I mean, it's not like the movies, like they do give you a little personal space, but I remember like I kept putting my like arms really, really tight against my body because I was just thinking like, I don't know, who knows where they like all that has been. I wanted no part of it.
You're gonna have oil stains on your clothes.
No, there was no contact at that level, but I will say there was, I smelled a lot of cologne and all that with all the hair whipping around in the air.
Oh.
It was, it was, I mean, and also like, remember, like this was the, like, God, how old was I then? I'm assuming it was like the early 90s. So it was like, like,
yeah, that was probably Dave.
See? But it was like one of those Chippendales-esque things that still happened back then. And like, and I remember after that, even like when my friends would have bachelorette parties, if there was any sort of like Vegas Chippendale component, I would always pretend to be sick. Because I was like, it's never happening again. Like I would go out, and then when it was time for everyone to go to that, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I drank too much. I think I'm going to throw up. I have to go back to my room. And everyone
we should
would
have
be
started the conversation with this story because we can go all night with this. Great.
I think no one wants me to write a comic about this.
Well, after listening to this, people are going to have nightmares about autopsies in Hawaiian tropics. So.
It's true. Or
And my
pizza with
dancing.
pizza with vegetables on it.
Pizza with Hawaiian tropic on it.
That's awful.
We have kept you way over. I apologize for that.
It's okay.
But
you guys
thank
are
you
very
so
fun.
much. Likewise, you were great too. And
awesome.
the final issue of Joker Harley Criminal Sanity is out in March. What's the exact day it comes out? Do we know?
I don't know.
It's out in March. Look it up. You all have Google.
It's all in March, and then the collected will come out in September. I believe it's early September.
Ooh. Is it going to be in that black label format? Do you know the dimensions?
They haven't. Well, I don't know. I mean, I saw somebody post it that it was up, that they saw a solicitation for it. So I'm assuming it's in that. Yeah. But I mean, it's it's pretty big now. So I have no idea. I'm assuming it will be big, but I could be wrong.
I hope we get like a television series or something based on it maybe one day. Who knows where it would go.
If not, like I said, I'm always happy to write additional serial killers. Writing one in X-Files was really fun. My one regret was that was a YA book, because that could have gone super dark. That was because it was canon.
One where he's a Chippendale dancer.
No, it's not that one.
A Chippendale pizza delivery guy.
It's not that one. It's very scary though, and because it was they wanted the time frame in canon even before they decided that the series was going to become part of the canon. It's set in 1979 because Mulder's 17. So it was really fun to write because, like, without cell phones and only pay phones and stuff, like, you can get into a lot of serial killer trouble, like, with no phone. Mm-hmm. And that was really fun to write. And do any of you play Dungeons and Dragons?
Not in a long time.
No hardcore nerding going on here.
That's not my flavor of nerding, but we spend our nights talking about comics on podcasts, and I work at a comic shop, so I think we're
cool.
we're equivalently
But
nerdy.
sometimes you get both. Like my comic store, Third Eye, they have like a game store next door where like you can paint your own Warhammer and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that I do that, but I'm just saying like I had to learn to play D&D to write the X-Files book. So which was interesting. Like, I mean, I'm not good, but it was like, I had to do like a demo game so I would know what I was talking about.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. And, like I said, I wasn't good. And again, like I think I'm better at cosplaying like than role playing. I'm better at just like putting like creating a costume than actually like acting any of it out. But hopefully maybe we'll meet one day. Maybe real cons will happen again.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That'd be amazing.
To go out into the real world, because I totally missed Comic-Con this year, and like I'm gonna miss all those in-person events. I'm hoping by next fall, maybe, if we can all get vaccinated, we can go out into the world again.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
But until then, everyone check out Criminal Sanity if you haven't already. One issue left. Jesus, I'm not ready for it to be over. I thought there were 2 issues left. But get out there and check it out. And thank you so much, Kami Garcia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, you guys.
Bye. Have a great night.
Yeah.